Hello everybody, this is Tyler here once again from the Character Workshop, and as they always say, there's no place like Rome. So, we're finally back to doing reviews and discussions of Doctor Who stories. So, we are taking a look at story number 12 of Doctor Who, which is also the fourth story of Season 2, which is simply titled The Romans. The events of The Romans start off basically around the same time as the very end of The Rescue, with the TARDIS hanging off of a cliff, and eventually at the start of The Romans, the TARDIS falls off the cliff, and throughout an entire month, the Doctor, Ian, Barbara, and Vicky were basically relaxing in a Roman villa. So basically, over the course of that month, they found out they're in ancient Rome. And so during the beginning of the story, the Doctor and Vicky decided to leave to travel to Rome, while Ian and Barbara were left behind. But while they were there, they were soon kidnapped by some slave traders, and then both Ian and Barbara were sold into slavery. And Barbara in particular was sold to a statesman in the courts of Emperor Nero, and this statesman was named Tavius. And the handmaiden to Nero's wife, Poppaea, who of course was also basically Nero's, I already mentioned Nero's wife, right? Anyways, so while Barbara was in the palace of Emperor Nero, Ian was confined to a gallery on the Mediterranean. So while the Doctor and Vicky were in Rome, the Doctor gets mistaken as a dead lyre player by the name of Maximus Battilion, and the Doctor decides to assume this identity after being attacked by an assassin. And the Doctor and Vicky arrive in Rome and encounter Tavius, as I mentioned earlier, Emperor Nero's statesman, who implies that both he and Battilion are part of a conspiracy. And while Ian was in the gallery towards the Mediterranean, they run into rough seas, and the ship was entirely broken up, washing him ashore along with another survivor by the name of Delos. And both of them head to Rome in search of Barbara, only to be captured and taken to be trained as gladiators. And then Emperor Nero organizes a banquet in the Doctor's honor, which, of course, Nero thinks that he's Maximus, at which he must play the lyre. And then Poppaea, his wife, is angered by Nero's attempts to flirt with Barbara throughout the story, and at one point attempts to try and poison her, which fails due to Vicky switching the poison goblet with the safe one. And while the Doctor was performing at the banquets, he made his own composition, saying like, oh, only the most sensitive ears can listen to it. And basically he just played the lyre, and there was no sounds coming from it. And Nero was angered by it, thinking that the Doctor was basically making fun of him, and decides to have the Doctor be fed to the lions. And during the arena, Ian and Delos were forced to basically fight while Nero and Barbara were watching. And they were attempting to also reunite with Barbara after a little while. However, they were, both taken away. And Nero soon calls off his soldiers, I almost said shoulders, and he plans to have Ian killed as soon as he returns to try and rescue Barbara. While searching around the palace, the Doctor finds Nero's new Rome plan and realizes that because it is the year 64 AD, Nero was planning to eventually destroy the city. And Tavius arrives and reveals to the Doctor was meant to be the assassin all along, and warns him that Nero is planning to kill him. And the Doctor accidentally sets fire to Nero's plans, which then gives Nero the idea for the Great Fire of Rome, where he would basically destroy Rome in order to build a new city out of it. And he spares the Doctor because of it as well. Ian and Barbara are eventually then reunited, and they escape back to the villa, and the Doctor and Vicky watch Rome as it burns down, and all four of them come back together, and they leave in the TARDIS before a strange force drags the ship to an unknown location, which we'll find out next time. So yeah, in short, that was the Romans in a nutshell, and I gotta say, this story ended up being way better than I remembered it being. I remember liking it the first time I saw it, 4 or 5 years ago, but, man, watching it now and, kind of realizing how a lot more entertaining the story is, I really appreciate it a lot more. In fact, I gotta say, as of right now, it's probably my second favorite historical Doctor Who story behind the Reign of Terror. Romans is absolutely great. And also, this is something I don't describe very often with Doctor Who stories, but it's like, it's very, very humorous. And I don't think there's been any other Doctor Who stories before that really have attempted to, like, you know, try to, you know, be very humorous. And I think the Romans kind of did that a lot. You know, there was, God, so many funny moments. Like, I remember in particular, there was, at the very, very beginning of the story, there was, while Ian and Barbara were together inside that Roman house, Barbara makes a joke to Ian saying, "Oh, there's more food in the fridge," and then Ian goes to grab it and then, like, realizes that they're in Rome and then obviously there's no fridges, and they kind of laughed it off because, you know, they knew it was a joke. And then, like, near the end of the story, when Ian and Barbara, you know, were reunited and went back, Ian pulled off the same joke on Barbara, you know, when he wanted to have Barbara get some food for him, and it's stuff like that, you know, is not only pretty humorous, but it also just kind of shows, like, kind of the fun side of, you know, the interaction between Ian and Barbara, which we've already known for, like, the past, like, season and a half, that, you know, they have a pretty strong relationship with one another, and, you know, that scene in particular, heavily proves that. And not just with that Ian and Barbara moment, but, like, the Doctor himself had, like, two pretty humorous scenes as well. One in particular was in part 2, where, there was somebody who was, like, trying to kill the Doctor, thinking that he was obviously Maximus, and, you know, the Doctor, you know, despite being mostly a pacifist character, like, goes on to, like, you know, defend himself and, you know, fight back against that guy. And then Vicky shows up and, you know, realizes the Doctor's being attacked, and she, like, grabs a vase to try and smash the guy's head, but the guy, like, escaped before she was able to do it, and the Doctor was like, "What did you do that for? I was having such a good time." And he mentioned something along the lines of, you know, it's not too often that I get to be involved with fisticuffs or something, and it's like, it's, like, pretty humorous, and he's like, it's even more funny when you realize that the Doctor, you know, later on isn't, you know, doesn't really partake in, like, you know, fights that much, and, you know, it's really rare and pretty humorous in the way he says it, you know, it just shows that there's, like, a side to the Doctor that actually likes to fight, and that's pretty funny. And the other part was near the very end, where the Doctor and Vicky find out about Nero's plans to rebuild Rome, and when Nero goes in to, like, you know, try to surprise the Doctor about the performance that he's gonna make, which in reality he's trying to feed the Doctor to the lions, and the Doctor kind of spoiled his plan, saying, "Oh, what are you trying to have me do? Perform at the arena?" And then the look on Nero's face, he was like, "Shit, how did he find out my plan?" And, like, the Doctor was making all sorts of puns relating to, you know, the event that was happening, and one of them, I remember in particular, he said, "I guess this performance might be a farewell performance, if I must say so myself." And, yeah, that was another funny moment. And also Nero in general, like, that, like, Derek Francis, the guy who played Nero, does, like, a fantastic job, you know, kind of portraying him as, like, you know, almost, like, a child in an adult's body. Like, there's, like, various moments where, like, you really see Nero, like, not acting very adult-like. You know, obviously trying to go after Barbara, you know, kind of the way he acts, like, you know, very upset that the Doctor kind of made a fool out of him with the silent liar performance, and yeah, this story is very humorous. I don't think I really have much else to say, you know. Don't expect me to say this very often with Doctor Who, but, like, this story actually made me laugh several times, and, you know, Doctor Who's mostly more of, like, a sci-fi drama, but, like, you know, one of the rare times where it's actually kind of a comedy. And as usual, the main cast, as well as the supporting cast, as I mentioned with Nero's actor, do a very amazing job in this story. Like I said, Ian and Barbara kind of, like, you know, showcase their, like, more humorous, like, fun-loving side towards each other. Seeing that this was, like, Vicky's second appearance in this series, she's a very, you know, tolerable character. I like her a lot. And, you know, she's already, like, this story as well as the previous one, The Rescue, are already making her, like, kind of prove to be, like, a more worthy successor to Susan, which, no offense to the character or Carol Ann Ford, but, like, they've written Vicky, like, so much better. Like, obviously, my number one complaint with Susan is, like, you know, her, like, overreaction and scaredness. Like, "Oh, grandfather!" And Vicky never really, you know, acts like that, you know? She acts worried about the Doctor when he was being attacked by the assassin, but, like, other than that, she's, you know, remained relatively calm and, you know, finds out about the poisoning, you know, thing by herself accidentally. So, yeah, Vicky, really strong character. I'm really liking her. So, something else that's kind of funny to point out is Not the fact that I have a different set of clothes that I did the previous shot that you saw. And no, it's not the fact that I'm filming this on a different night as the previous couple shots. But one other thing that's pretty funny about the Romans is that at the very end when all four characters like meet back up with each other, like Dr. and Vicky tell Ian and Barbara what happened with them, but like the funny thing was Ian and Barbara never told Dr. and Vicky about what happened to them during the events of the Romans. So for all that Dr. and Vicky know, like Ian and Barbara were just at that house the whole entire time. And yeah, it's kind of funny in that way. Like I said, very humorous story, The Romans. I heavily recommend it for like anybody out there. Like if you're not a fan of like, you know, the historical stories of Doctor Who, I would say make an exception for The Romans. You know, there's a lot of humor with it. I think honestly, like the humor is kind of like what you know, gives this story the worth watching, I would say. I mean, story-wise, it's, you know, it's not bad. You know, it kind of, you know, sort of led to, like, you know, the Great Fire of Rome in the, in 64 AD, which, I mean, it was interesting how that ended up playing out. But yeah, I'd say the humor definitely, like, you know, is the strong point of the Romans, and definitely worth a watch in my opinion. Like I said earlier in the video, my second favorite historical story in Doctor Who so far that I've reviewed, besides Reign of Terror, which I still think is the best one that I've seen so far, but Romans is still really good. And for that reason alone, I am probably going to give the Romans a 8.5 out of 10. Yeah, I was honestly considering to give it an 8 out of 10, but I don't know, the more I thought about it, the more I kind of enjoyed the Romans. I kind of enjoy it more than both The Rescue and Planet of Giants, also from Season 2, so yeah, Romans is not only my second favorite historical story in Doctor Who so far, but also my second favorite Season 2 story so far, so that just shows like how much I love the Romans. Definitely give it a watch. It's available on the Season 2 collection box set, so there's a way to watch it in, like, you know, upscaled high definition, so yeah, there we go. That is my review and discussion of Doctor Who The Romans. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more episodes of It Came From England, or just mediocre plush content in general. Be sure to turn on the notification bell so you're notified each time I upload a new episode of It Came From England or any of my other videos. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. That is about it. This is Tyler from the Character Workshop, signing out, and in the next episode, we're going to be covering another BBC sitcom. However, it wasn't premiered on their main channel, it actually premiered on BBC Two. And this is a sitcom involving 4 college guys, and every one of them are young.